Hey, boys and girls, we are up to session 6 of our fairy tale unit. And so, yesterday you were asked to upload what you believe is your best effort for your fairy tale adaptation. And so, up until now, you have only written one fairy tale adaptation. And we've had a few lessons on different things that you need to include in your fairy tale, and we've discussed always going back into those drafts and revising based on the new things that you've learned. So today's session is called Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. And I love this title because, of course, it refers to the story of Snow White, but also about looking at ourselves. So let's take a look. It's an important day because when I was getting ready for this lesson, I knew that you're all finishing your fairy tales, and I was honestly thinking about how much you have grown as writers since the beginning of the year. And remember, lots of times earlier this year, some of you would creep up next to me and say, "Is this good? What should I do now?" And honestly, sometimes it still happens, but I am realizing that more and more are starting to ask themselves questions and trying to find their answers. So I know you're on the right track. So that's why today's lesson is super important. Today I want to teach you that writers know that their writing gets better, not only from what they do on the page with their pen or when they type, but also from what they do off the page. And so today is all about doing stuff off the page. And no work is more powerful than being a really tough critic of one's own draft, rereading one's writing and judging it against goals in such a way that the writer comes away with goals to live by and stars to steer by. So today's lesson is about self-reflection on that draft that you turned in yesterday. Let's take a look on how you're going to do it. So let me show you what I mean. So if you all remember, this is our narrative writing checklist. And we started the school year with this checklist, and I remember it very clearly that a lot of us struggled with many of the components of this checklist. And even worse than what we struggled with, when we use the checklist, we would just skim through. We'd be like, yeah, check, yeah, I kind of do that. But we can't do that anymore, boys and girls. We actually understand the checklist now, and we can actually use the checklist to become better writers. Let's keep going. So, do you think that kind of work is going to help me get better as a writer? No. All of you know what it feels like to be deeply engaged in an assessment. I've seen it in the classroom. And although, yes, we are not sitting side by side looking at our writing and, assessing it, I know you could do this at home. And so it wouldn't feel right to just go through our writing and go, yeah, sure. No. To become a strong writer, and even though you're still at home, you are still working on being a strong writer. It's important for you to try the deeply engaging way of assessing your work. As you are doing this work with your own stories, you're not only thinking deeply about this story, but you're also going to have to start thinking about your future stories because you are going to be writing another fairy tale adaptation, a completely different story. And so really looking at the work you're doing now is going to also help you make goals for your next story on what you really want to fix and do better at. So writers, you will pull out your drafts on Google Docs and your narrative writing checklist, which is attached to today's assignment. As you read back and forth between the first few items in your checklist and your draft, don't just read with kind of energy. You need to be focused and deeply engaged. Now, you can even stop this video right now and get started, or you could watch the whole video and then get to it. So, here is your narrative writing checklist, and that's also going to be attached in your assignment today. And now here is some final words. I wish my head was not blocking the words. All right, here we go. Writers, this is a long checklist, and it will be really important that you don't just read the checklist, but also read your writing to check on whether you really, truly try to do each of these items in a super duper way. And I'm looking for it. It would be really cool if you highlighted your draft where you did the things from the checklist. Better yet, look at what you want to work on for your next fairy tale and set a goal. So here is what you're doing today. First thing is you are going to pull up your draft, and I actually used Alexandra's as an example so I can show you what you need to do. So when you pull up your draft, you are going to read the checklist and you are going to look at your writing. And when you look at them side by side, let's say you're focusing on your lead, you are going to find your lead and see that you've matched it with a level 3 or a level 4 on your checklist. I highlighted Alexandra's. The way to highlight is if you click and cover, and then you click this little paintbrush thing here, you can actually pick the highlighting color. I picked yellow, but you can pick blue or green or pink or purple, up to you. And then I also click the comment box so that I can also write what I noticed. So here I wrote lead, wrote a beginning that showed what was happening in the story, the who, and the where. It's quick notes to myself. Over here, I was also doing some dialogue. I noticed that she had dialogue, and so I highlighted here and I said dialogue and thoughts. Now, that took me a minute to do, but if I went through the whole checklist, it should take me about 10 to 15 minutes to go back and forth. And truthfully, most of your writing should be highlighted with different comments because you should have your lead represented, you should have an ending, transitional words, dialogue, you should have I'm so sorry. You should have different examples of craft and elaboration. So if you wrote a story that is well represented of a level 3 or level 4, it should be highlighted with lots of different comments. The last step. So after you do the highlighting, so that means your draft would now have highlights and comments. You are going to attach that version in the assignment. And then you're going to do one other step, and that is a Google form. And the Google form is very, very simple. All you have to do is type your name first and last and answer the simple question. After you used your checklist and you highlighted your writing pieces, each part commenting on what you did really well, you're gonna probably notice some things that you didn't do your very best or some things you still need to work on. All you have to do is, based on what you notice that you didn't really do very well, write one goal that you have for your next fairy tale and submit it. So I'm just gonna go over it again. What your assignment is for today, after you watch this entire video, is pull up the draft that you attached yesterday. It should be a Google Doc. You are going to also click on the narrative checklist, and you are going to switch back and forth between the checklist and your draft, highlighting examples of things that you see in your checklist that you have in your writing. You don't only highlight, but you also comment what you did well in those sections. Then you attach that version to the assignment and you do the Google form, and then you turn in and mark as done the whole assignment. This should take you a good amount of time, and I really want you to be dedicated to it, just like it's as if you were taking an assessment, because this is a way to not only make your writing better, assessing yourself, but to also show how much you've grown since September. Can't wait to see your work. Love you all. Good job.